I'm Ryan, and you're watching Creative Sound Lab, a weekly TV show with recording tips, pointers, and hopefully a few things that you've never heard before. Well, today I wanted to kind of give you my technique and approach to vocal recording, and not necessarily the microphone placement on a vocalist. That is for other videos, and that can be a pretty in-depth topic, but this is really about what else that I do that I think a lot of engineers miss when they record vocals. They typically skip this part, and to be honest, it's kind of a gold mine of opportunity here for a really cool effect for your vocal recordings. And what is it? Well, I'm actually in the habit of recording the room when I record my vocalist. And there's three main ways that you can do this, and the first two pretty much have to happen right then and there. The third one is kind of the beginning of a series that will continue in the next video, which is a way to actually capture this if you forgot to do it. So I'm going to walk you through three ways of capturing basically some ambience of your vocalist in the room to create a unique tactile effect. Okay, so I'd like to say that there's really three ways of pulling this method off of capturing the room but not the vocalist. And the first one really has to do with figure 8 microphones, bidirectional, figure of 8. These are all terms to the same type of polar pattern. It's basically a polar pattern that gets anything from the front and the back. This could be a 414, this could be an R84, like a ribbon microphone. So these are microphone types that collect from the front and the back, but they don't collect from the side. So there's a null. So you can point this null directly at the vocalist. So if the camera was the vocalist, I could point this mic basically facing it a perfect 90 degrees that way, and then the back of the mic this way. And it won't collect anything coming from there, but it would do only the sides. And essentially, that's what I have for this very first example here, is that it just so happened that I have a microphone that is a ribbon mic. I really enjoyed the sound of the microphone for the vocalist, and I was just planning to use it in a mono configuration. But because there's an extra mic contained in it, I figured, you know what, I might as well go ahead and record that mic that's shooting out to the sides. Turns out that once I did that, then I was able to really kind of use that as its own reverb effect. So let's have a listen to what this sounds like. This is the R88. It's a ribbon pointed directly at the vocalist, and it's a ribbon pointed out to the sides. This is just the vocalist, the dry vocal.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels. I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found, I like the way it feels. Road goes on for miles and miles, and the blacktop never ends. I've driven it before, and I'll drive it again. When are you coming home, love? I don't know when, but I'd love to see you then.
So you can hear how smooth it comes in and comes out. I don't have any of that typical phasing weirdness like if you were to use two mics on a guitar cabinet. Don't have that. These two ribbons are, perfectly phase coherent, at least as close as they could be to the vocalist. So because of that fact, it's really kind of a nice setup for this application. But really, it's just proving the point of how well it can actually take out what's right in front of it. This room sound is sounding like it's across the room, but it's really only a few inches from our vocalist. That's really how how effective the figure 8 microphone can be. The second method for capturing the room sound of a vocalist is to use a cardioid mic. Point it basically the total opposite direction of your vocalist. And being cardioid, it has a null out the back. You could do it with hypercardioid and kind of point it, to the sides, because the null is kind of coming out to the sides of the microphone a little bit, but mostly in the back. So you really just point the back of the cardioid microphone to the wall. You want to just make sure to point that null of the mic, the back of the mic, the XLR connector. That's really almost what you should be aiming the microphone with, is pointing that XLR connector to the vocalist, and that way you know that you're getting everything else but the vocalist. Now, there's a traditional technique of recording room sounds, like with drums and things, where they take like cardioid microphones or even omnis, or tons of techniques here. But I've done it myself, and you take a cardioid, you point it into the corners, and that's pretty cool. But there's still going to be a sense of delay between where the microphone's actually positioned in the room, regardless of where it's pointing, and the actual source of the sound. And that distance is going to create a natural delay. It could be only 5 or 6 milliseconds. But there's still going to be some delay there. And it's not always the easiest thing to get those two mics to completely cooperate with one another if there's a discrepancy in phasing and some sort of weird delay happening that you're just not liking. So it takes me back to the figure 8 kind of idea, is that you can put a microphone really close to your vocalist, like right on top of them, and you can really capture the room, but it's completely gelling with your main vocal mic. And of course, all this stuff is not, it's not gospel here, okay? You may say, okay, that's an idiot idea, that's the stupidest idea you've ever heard, and that's cool. But for me, in my studio, I've had pretty good results with this stuff, and it seems to work. It doesn't always work, okay? So you just got to use your ears and just kind of go with it. If something works one day, it doesn't mean that it's always going to work or work for you. It just means that's just how it is. So, a final point on the figure 8 microphone is that if you're not able to get it completely phase coherent, basically, point it at the same position and occupy the same kind of space between the microphones and the vocalist, then it's okay. Technically, like mid-side recording, what you do is you point a mic that is cardioid, and then you basically in the same space, you try to basically make two microphones fit into one tiny three-dimensional space so that everything is phase coherent. Now, what I'm saying is, okay, with this, the main vocal mic is number one, obviously. You want to make sure you don't do anything to distract from getting that sound that works for the session and the vocalist. And if you have to compromise on the room mic, the figure 8 mic, you can easily, set it back a few feet. You could actually still do like the MS kind of mixing where you double that track, hard pan, and flip one of the channels and still get a stereo effect. It's not technically correct mid-side recording, but you can get away with it to some extent as long as you don't really, pull up those channels too much. So you can do it, and don't, it's okay if you don't agree with me, that's cool. But for me, I've had mixed luck with it. Sometimes it works and it makes a really cool kind of room effect that's somewhat stereo, like quasi stereo, and then other times it's like, yeah, it just sounds really funny and I can't do it. That's another kind of cool trick that you can use. And the third way is really shifting gears. It's not about creating a live capture of the sound in the room, but it's recreating the sound in the room using a reverb chamber. And in the next episode, we'll go into this extensively about how to set it up, things to watch out for, what to do, and what not to do. But creating a reverb chamber really bridges us into other elements in the mix. And this concept today is all about adding a kind of a liveliness, three-dimensional quality to a vocal. and doing it through capturing what we already have given to us for free without any sort of DSP processing or plugin processing or any of that. It's just free. We just got to take it. And so, that's the concept for today. And then the Reverb Chamber is a way that you can get it back if you didn't happen to capture it. You can always set up a Reverb Chamber, and it only takes 5 minutes, but you can reuse it for other tracks while you have it set up. So that'll be for the next episode. So let's check out some of the ways that I would use this kind of in a mixing environment. So let me kind of show you the song as it is right now.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels. I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found, yeah, I like the way it feels.
Okay, so right off the bat, our vocals jumping around all over the place. And so, my first instinct is to add compression.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels.
Okay, so right there, every word is pretty smooth. There's a few words that kind of still jump out. We can still massage it, play around with the compressor, add other layers of compression to accomplish our goals, but it's already a lot better. But then at the same time, if we were to add plugins, we would be set. Okay, so let's add a plugin, and dynamically the plugin will basically listen to this compressed sound and give us back something according to the compression. So I have a plugin pulled up. We can listen to that here.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels. I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found, yeah, I like the way it feels.
So, that plugin isn't bad. That plugin is actually a classic plugin, the EMT 250. A classic reverb effect device, I should say. And it was really great for really short reverbs. And I have the plugin version. They're extremely rare, so, But that's a pretty good plugin for, collecting, signal, creating a pleasing reverb effect. It's really good for mixing. I had it cranked a little bit there just so you could hear it, but this effect is basically listening to the compressed sound. If we go back to the room sound, it's still uncompressed, so it's still interacting with the room. It's a tactile effect. Let's see what this sounds like.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and
Yeah, you can hear it on the word mile.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels.
If I mix it in a little bit better, let's see here.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way.
Okay, so kind of mix it in here. Listen to the word mile, how much it jumps out.
I walked a mile in the shoes of a.
So this could be kind of an advantage to realism in your recordings, or it could be a disadvantage because it kind of fights you a little bit. I actually kind of think it's kind of cool because on certain words it accentuates the loudness, the effect of loudness on those particular words. Now, another trick that I like to do a lot, especially with this stuff, is I don't exactly like the sound of these together necessarily, but what I will often do is put a delay on this room mic, and it becomes a delay effect. And it's not just a clean delay, but it's a dirty delay because it's basically a delay on the room sound. So go ahead and add a delay of, I don't know, how about 60 milliseconds or so. Let's see what that sounds like.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels.
And if I want to do that, I might as well just push it even further and see what we get.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels. I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels.
So you can really have fun with this. It's, like I said, it's a free effect. You didn't have to take time bouncing this stuff down to free up, DSP processing or any of that. It's just a track sitting there with just wet reverb. So if you like the sound of it, it's definitely cool to play around with. Finally, kind of my other cool trick with mixing is to create an MS kind of technique with this. So this is figure 8. So one side of the microphone was a positive pressure, the back side, the other side of the mic was a negative pressure. So I could, in theory, take this, double it, and then basically take the polarities or the phase, and instead of it going up, it goes down instead, and hard pan them. So flip the phase on one channel, hard pan them out, and combine them with that middle channel. This is really a respectable science, so I'm really butchering the explanation of MS technique here, but essentially you're doubling the tracks, flipping one of those tracks, and hard panning them. Okay, so here is a kind of a faux MS kind of technique. If I want a true MS, which I really don't want a stereo image on my vocalist in case he moves to one side or the other. But really, this is essentially MS kind of mixing here, and I'm adding 121 milliseconds, kind of a rhythmic delay to this. Really just trying to get a stereoized kind of effect here. I don't know if this is really going to sound good or not, but let's go ahead and give it a try. I've had this work in the past. Let's check it out.
I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found I like the way it feels. I walked a mile in the shoes of another, and I found, yeah, I like the way it feels.
Okay, so right there at the end, we can really hear how there's not a grounding track to ground the mathematical summation of these three tracks together. It's a mathematical equation of how basically one and the other add together with that center channel to create a stereo image. And when you really push it, you can hear that it's really not correctly supported. But that's a really cool effect. It wasn't a whole lot of work. Literally, it was just a mic built into this other one. It just happens to be a stereo setup, but you could easily throw up a 414 a couple of feet out from the vocalist and still have this effect. It's not true MS approach, okay, but it is still a really viable effect. So give it a shot, okay? It's really cool. Now, if you want a guide for this, I have a guide for all my subscribers, and you can get that guide by signing up for my mailing list with the link below. It's a PDF guide with everything that we covered today. You can store it on your computer, and when you need to quickly reference something in the middle of a session, you have it there ready for you. And finally, next week is going to be learning how to set up reverb chambers. And so these are great for if you get live tracks from a live recording, and they had to use a DI box on an acoustic guitar. So there's no sort of breath or liveliness that you'd get with a microphone. You could save those acoustic tracks. You can also save a snare drum if it has just no life whatsoever. And of course, a vocal, we can reattain the three-dimensional reverb, tactile reverb effects that we're using today by using a reverb chamber. So once again, if you want that PDF guide, use the link below this video. Till next week, have fun with this. I'll see you.
I walk